the skills of students.
President Bongbong Marcos is banking on an expanded booster vaccine campaign to ensure a safe resumption of in-person classes.
Pagka maging matagumpay ang ating booster rollout, ay makikita naman natin, siguro pwede na nating ibaba ang mga alert level, pwede na natin gawing optional ang mask. Pero hindi po natin gagawin yan hanggang maliwanag na safe na talaga.
One teachers group is asking to delay the reopening of in-person classes.
The Teachers Dignity Coalition is asking for reconsideration after Education Secretary Sara Duterte signed an order declaring August 22 as the start of the next school year.
Kailangan din namin maghanda physically, emotionally, mentally. Hanggang ngayon, Sir Joey, hindi pa tapos yung ating mga gawain sa mga eskwelahan. Kung ito po ay mapagbibigyan, sa tingin naman po namin kaya na po natin itong face-to-face by November.
Mixed reactions on the resumption of face-to-face classes on November 2. Some say it's about time. Our children have a lot of catching up to do. But others doubt if students are really safe with COVID still around. So are we really safe and are we really ready? We ask in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. Kasama ko po dito sa studio, Ed Lingao of One News. And joining us online from Manila, Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. And in Quezon City, Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5. Chiefs, good evening.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Ami, headlines tomorrow.
Mukhang gusto yata ng bagong administrasyon na to trim the bureaucratic fat. Magkakaroon daw ng right sizing. That's the word they use.
Well, they've been at it since...
Parang ibang-iba yan sa ano Di ba sinabi niya noon, ayaw niyang mag-lay off or to remove personnel? That seems to be a...
Pero billion yung masasave.
Sige.
No, I think what the president said and what Malacanang said was he's acknowledging na mahirap yun, na masakit yun. But at the same time, from the very first week pa lang, I mean, his first their first actions from Malacanang, even before EO1, was in fact to take away all the low-hanging na pwedeng tanggalin. Yung mga numbers of undersecretaries who were not there, the hundreds of consultants, positions that were created during the time of the Duterte administration.
Pati nga yung discount ng mga estudyante pag nag-face-to-face na babawasan yung discount sa train, LRT 2 na lang daw.
Well, that's something that we will have to get into. In fact, let's get into it right now. The Education Department, of course, has mandated all public and private schools nationwide to start transitioning to 5 days of face-to-face classes beginning November 2. How are schools gearing up for this? We ask Philippine Business for Education Acting Executive Director Justine Ragas. Good evening, Ms. Ragas. Welcome to The Chiefs.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Justine.
And let's just jump straight into it. Face-to-face classes. Unisha, I mean, maybe you could clarify first. Nung una ang sinabi, November 2, what the President wants, ideally, is that by November, full na, 100% face-to-face. He started talking about a phase-in starting September. Whatever it is, how do you feel about it right now, the timetable for returning to face-to-face?
So we're actually glad to finally have this development. In fact, for the longest time, even earlier on, PBED has always been calling to open safe face-to-face classes when in locations that are able to do so. So for example, before even earlier during the pandemic, if cities or LGUs which have really low cases, we were pushing for opening because evidence really tells us that there are huge consequences of school closures to our learners and the economy. So in terms of how I think about it and how we feel about it, this is a very welcome development. And I think given the preparations that DepEd has done with the pilot runs that it has been doing since last year, and the expanded implementation early this year, we are positive that this is enough time for them to learn from the experience of the schools and see the best practices, or see the best practices once they go full blast this November.
But what kind of preparations should we expect, or would you want to see? Not just the physical preparations. I mean, I don't just mean preparing the classrooms for a COVID scenario, but as well yung preparation sa curriculum. We've had 2 years of modular remote learning, and now we're transitioning to face-to-face. Siyempre, may impact yan sa teachers, may impact yan dun sa students, may impact yan dun sa method of teaching.
Correct. So I guess on the administrative and logistical side, we really need to make sure that the government has in place the following: teachers and students are fully vaccinated, proper hygiene is enforced in the classroom, and of course this has to also go hand in hand with enforcing this at home, or reinforcing communications at home, kasi baka naman pag pumasok yung mga bata tas ini-enforce yung proper hygiene, pero sa bahay hindi siya ginagawa kasi hindi natutuunan ng pansin ng mga parents. So parents also have to be part of the scenario. In terms of the curriculum and in terms of making sure that the learning is angkop sa pagbabalik ng mga kabataan in the classroom, because so much has changed. What we're really seeing kasi is meron talagang mga learning losses. Our students have been out of school for out of this classroom setting for about 2 years, and they have been learning using modules for many of them because they do not have access to technology. So the Global Education Evidence Advisory Panel, it's an independent cross-disciplinary body actually of education experts. They recommend that the government should really identify learning gaps first, and adjust instruction to target the child's level of learning. So what does this mean actually? And actually this is part of DepEd's learning recovery program. But what does this mean essentially? It means that ideally sana in schools or in the local setting, schools and teachers are able to identify the nuances kung nasaan or anong level ba talaga yung mga kabataan. So kunyari pumasok sila ng grade 5, pero upon assessment their learning level is still at grade 3. Then the teachers are supported so that they will be able to target the instruction towards that level of learning, versus say they enter grade 5 and then automatic you just teach them the grade 5.
That you don't assume na grade 5 lahat talaga kayo.
Correct.
But that puts a burden on teachers, no? Parang that assumes too much on the teacher's part, no? I mean, we all know that the teachers also suffered greatly, and with all due respect to teachers, I mean, the quality of teaching has also declined, no? So when you're saying that they have to assess and then they have to adjust, I think that's something that's, easier said than done at the very least. So, what about teacher support? I mean, we're so focused on the children, and as well we should be, but what about teachers?
Good question, Lucino. And actually earlier when we presented our 5-point education agenda of what we were pushing for, our second point was actually increasing the support for teachers, because you're right, teachers are the single most important factor in determining learning outcomes. And that support, so the teachers actually, they have a life cycle when they enter into the teaching profession, right? They initially in pre-service, they train. When they enter into DepEd, they also get additional training there. And then part of their life cycle as well is the support that they get in terms of salaries, in terms of assessment, and the tasks that they are also doing. So many teachers actually also complain that they're doing a lot of administrative tasks that take them away from the actual. Correct. So they also had to provide that support. So we do advocate for support for learners and teachers by rethinking by rethinking the way we, the way we train them, the way we retrain them, and even the way we provide resources to them. One thing also that one of our advocacies in PBED is actually hiring of para-teachers and teacher assistants. And I'd like to share that because teachers are facing a huge backlog of learning, it would really be of great help if they could focus on the learning recovery, and then somebody else helps take care of managing the classroom, making sure that the attendance is checked, like rallying the kids. And just to share, we actually implemented a project which was for early grade learners. And we provided these early grade learners technology to learn numeracy and literacy. And what we saw was that using that technology with the help of tutors or para-teachers, their grades or their learning gains actually went up 122% for reading and about 20% for mathematics. So isa yan sa nakikita naming tulong talaga na maibibigay natin for teachers.
What about the school operators? Kasi yung Kokopeya, the private school operators, they're also saying dahan-dahan naman yung pag-full face-to-face, no? And sabi nila, well, pareho din sila ng teachers hindi pa raw. And they are asking for the option na ituloy yung kanilang mga blended learning in certain schools, certain areas. What do you think of that?
Actually, to that point, the future of education naman talaga is flexibility. And flexibility and the ability to harness the use of technology. For the public school system, where many of our children do not have access to really good technology and do not have access to teachers because they don't have laptops or computers and they just learn using the modules or radios. Going full face-to-face is really the key because it brings them to the classroom. But we think for schools and communities who are actually able to use technology and the internet, there should be some form of flexibility to help some form of flexibility for them, particularly if these students in these schools have access.
Okay, Justine, one last question before we let you go. What about all the considerations outside of the immediate learning environment? I mean, outside of classroom, for that matter, outside of schools. Transportation, mobility, the traffic that they're going to go through, nutrition, for that matter. What about those factors?
So this is actually where part of our advocacy comes in. Education does not exist in a bubble and shouldn't be the responsibility of DepEd alone. As they say, diba, it takes a village to raise a child. And in many cases, well, I guess in reality, bringing a child to school and getting them to learn takes more than just the classroom and the medium of instruction. You really have all these other things surrounding. So family, as you said, transportation, nutrition. So we're really calling on all other sectors to, help each other out. And then also even discussions between government agencies to really make sure that these services, say nutrition, for example, in the classroom, or nutrition, talking to parents to make sure that there's proper nutrition at home. So really just bringing together everyone for that sole purpose of making sure that the child from pre-K really goes and finishes senior high school because of all these surrounding factors and support.
Okay, Justine Ragas of the Philippine Business for Education. Maraming salamat.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justine.
And we're still here on the issue of in-person classes. We now speak to the Alliance of Concerned Teachers Chairperson Vladimir Quetua. Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Chiefs.
Magandang gabi sa inyo at sa lahat ng libo-libo ninyong manonood.
Sir, balikan lang po natin yung mga concerns ng ating mga guro. Kanina, we were also talking to another teacher sa Big Story. Even before concerns about COVID, they're also concerned about the whole schedule. I mean, the resumption of classes in August, and they're saying that's not even giving us enough time to rest and enough. We're not even getting the entitled break that we should have. So even prior to the face-to-face, is that a valid concern?
Yeah, actually, malaking problem talaga yan. Ano? Napakaraming utang na ng DepEd. Sa katunayan, school year 2020-2021, may utang na sila ng 77 days. No? After June 24, ay nagkaroon muli ng klase. No? Dapat tapos na yung klase June 24. So after a week, ay nagkaroon pa ng mga remedial, nagkaroon pa ng mga pagtitipon sa recognition, sa graduation, at tumagal ito hanggang sa kasalukuyan. No? Kaya may 3 linggong utang ang Department of Education. At ang masakit pa sa inilabas ngayong DepEd Order 34, kalalabas lamang noong July 11, ngayong taong ito, ay sinasabi na dapat ay magpasukan na ng August 22. No? Ang masakit dito ay sabi nga namin, hindi kami makina, hindi kami robot. No? Kailangan namin ng pahinga. No? At yun, isang clamor ng mga guro. No? Pero ang malaking usapin dito ay tiyak ba, ligtas ba, safe ba, no? Dekalidad ba yung pagbubukas ng klase sa August 22. Kaya kami, kanina umaga lamang ay nagpasa ng sulat para makipagdialogo sa ating pangalawang Pangulo at sa lubuyang kalihim ng Department of Education na harapin yung matinding problema, no, ng mga kaguruan, ng mga kabataan at mga gulang sa pagbubukas ng klase ito. No? Kung inyong marapatin, ang masakit sa DepEd Order na ito ay maliban sa papasok na ng aga, ay hindi tayo dumaan, no? Hindi tayo dumaan sa 2 taong may pandemya, no? Sa katunayan, yung nilabas na DepEd Order 34 na ito, sabi ko nga kanina, parang hindi dumaan sa pandemya, no? Wala man lang tools o wala man lang pamamaraan para masigurado na yung paaralan ay ligtas, no? Kaya isang panawagan namin sa 6 na requisitos dito ay dagdagan yung MOE. Imagine yung pagbubukas ng classes August 22 ay parang pre-pandemic requirements lamang, lisensya at mga permit lamang. At ang isang masakit pa dito, imagine itong DO34 dito, tandaan natin, sinasabi ng kanyang guidelines, no? Sinasabi ng kanyang bahagi ng kanyang DO34. Ito ay magaganap ito regardless yung alert level na ipapatupad ng IATF sa DO. Ito na yung magaganap mula November, no? Hanggang sa mga darating ng mga school year. At ano isang masakit dito, no? Imagine yung pagpe-prevent ng COVID-19, no? At sinasabi napakalayo dun sa sinasabi nilang to encourage strict adherence to public health protocol. Malayong-malayo. Imagine, sabi ko nga kanina, walang inspection. Wala man lang pagtitiyak na yung mga mag-aaral kapag kumakain ay ligtas siya o kaya mga guro. Imagine, ang sinasabi lamang niya, kapag sila ay magkakaharap kumain, magtalikuran na lamang kayo. No? Pangalawa, no? Wala man lang, sinasabi lamang nila para regarding sa ventilation, ay dapat bukas lamang ang mga classroom. Wala man lang sinabi, dapat ay magkaroon ng mga electric fan o dapat mahusay na hangin, etc. At ang pinakamasakit pa dito, no, malinaw doon sa sinasabi, kapag ikaw ay COVID-19 positive, turn COVID-19 positive, the school shall not be held liable. Kaya tinatanong namin ng DepEd dito, no, anong klaseng DepEd order ito? Dapat ay meron tayong pagwawasto doon sa nakaraang 2 taon.
Pero sa
Kung susundin lahat ng mga kailangan ninyo para magpatuloy ulit ng face-to-face, ano ang tamang petsa? Is there such a date when you can really truly say you're ready? Kasi parang ang daming ang tamakan, ang daming kailangan ayusin. Halimbawa, how do you fit in 35 students in a classroom, considering that we have so few classrooms to cater to all the school children? I can't even see how the social distancing can be managed, no? You will have to add many more classrooms, probably double the number now. But, now that you're saying August 22 na, meron bang petsa na masasabi mo na eto pwede na, kaya na natin to? What's a date? What's a good date?
Alam bansa ang hindi pa nagbubukas, no? Tingnan namin yung 2 taon na sa paghahanda, no? Ang problema ay unang-una, walang konsultasyon sa mga stakeholders. Ano pa talaga dapat yung pagtitiyak ng ligtas na balik paaralan, no? Sa katunayan, yung mga assessments na isasagawa ay hindi naman nakabatay doon sa mga learning gaps na nawala. Sa katunayan, yung mga sinasabi nilang mga kakulangan ay hindi naman nakalapat sa lupa. kung meron mang mga pagtitiyak ng mga sinasabi nating mga thermometer, para mga pagkakaroon ng eskwelahan na kung saan ay ligtas, ay nung naraon lamang ng November, kung saan ay nagkaroon ng limited face-to-face, no? Ang dami namin dito, ningas Google lamang ito, no? Tingin namin ay sapat na yung August 22. Bakit? Kasi ang dami nang nawala, no? Ang mga bata ay gusto na mag-aral, no? Tingin namin yung petsa ay sekundarya na lamang, pero mahalaga ay mag-aral na ito sa kagyat kasi ang dami nang nawala dito.
So ano
Pero
yung sinasabi
hindi-
ninyong kulang? Anong sinasabi ninyo?
Oo.
Kung nag-limited face-to-face na nung November pa edi may experience na kayo kung ano pa yung gusto nyo ngayon before August 22. Ano ang mga specific, siguro example lang ng specific actions na gusto nyo makita before August 22?
Kailangan, una-una, yung unahan namin, siyempre, general lang yung panawagan, yung MLO budget. No? Pero kaugnay dito, yung mga ginagamit, no? Yung pagtitiyak. Halimbawa po, sa aming paaralan, meron kaming clinic, pero wala pong mga nurse. Sa paaralan pinanggalingan ko po, meron pong nurse, pero lumilipat po sa mga paaralan dito, no? Isang particular din po, yung mga tinatawag po nating mga kagamitan sa pampaaralan, no? Yung mga module po, sabi nga natin, iba po sa PIMPA kung mali ito, no? Yung pong mga ganun kasimple. Tapos napakatinding pangangailangan po yung mga kakulangan na pwede naman. Halimbawa po, yung pag-ensure po na yung teacher ay dapat ang tinuturuan niya ay ganito lamang, no? At siyempre, sabi nga natin, matiyak nga po yung mismong ginagamit mismo ng mga teacher at saka po ng learners pagpasok na ng August 22. Tingin namin kaya yan no? May budget para dito.
Sir, pero maliban dun sa physical at physiological issues ng COVID-19, ini-imagine ko rin kung gaano kahirap magiging trabaho ninyo pagdating dun sa yung sa tawagan nila learning recovery kasi may learning deficit tayo, 2 taong biro mo, 2 taong online yung so maghahabol kayo kahit papaano at malaki-laki nga habulin ninyo. Sa tingin ba ninyo sapat na ang ginagawang preparasyon para dun sa paghahabol na yon? Natutunan ba napansin yung paghahabol na yun?
Para paghahabol, nabalitaan yung isang DepEd order na nilalabas bago matapos ang taong ito, yung mga may grado na 71 hanggang 74, ganito ang gawin namin. No? Magkaroon kami ng enrichment, magkaroon kami ng mga remedial classes. No? Ganon yung paraan ng paghabol namin. No? At sa katunayan nga, ito nga, papalapit nga uli yung mga enrollment, papalapit ang mga brigada eskwela. Pinoproblema muli ng mga guro, ng mga administrator, ng mga principal na kasama natin, na saan kukuha noong pagkapag nagbukas na yung klase. Kasi tinitingnan natin yung transition kasi ng November mula August 22, from 3 days to distance hanggang maging 4 days to distance hanggang maging 5 days na. Malaking problema yan kasi ang dami rin naglipatan mula sa private patungo sa public. No? Kaya maraming kakailangan. No? At yan yung tingin namin na isa rin namin pupulimahin. No? Kaya balik ulit sa dati. May magtuturo sa classroom 3. Ibig sabihin, under the tree. May magka-classroom na naman sa mga covered court. Tapos maghahatid ka na naman sa mga learning materials. Balik ulit sa dating gawin.
Sir, bukod doon sa balik sa dating gawi, I'm just trying to imagine, pagka sinabi nating bumalik tayo sa dating sitwasyon, because the reality is, noong panahon ng COVID, maraming pribadong eskwelahan nagsara. Diba? So, and marami dyan naglipatan sa public. So, quick audit lang po ng sitwasyon in terms of yung options ng kabataan natin kung saan sila papasok ngayon. From 2 years ago to where we are right now, ano po ba yung balanse natin between public and private schools and what does that mean in terms of yung siksikan na naman sa public schools?
Well, sa elementary, of course, marami pa rin mga elementary schools hanggang high school, no? Pero pagdating ng tertiary, of course, marami ang private, no? Pero in terms of students, I'm speaking only the senior high school kasi po only tuturo ng senior high school. No, in-imagine namin after grade 10, junior high school, nagpupuntahan sa iba, karamihan sa senior high school private, no? Pero muli, babalik uli sa senior high school. Kaya ako, nagtuturo po ako 60, nagtuturo po ako 70. Pag pumunta po kayo sa ilang lugar dito sa Quezon City, meron pa rin po 100, no? At swerte na lang, sabi ng teacher, buti na lang, nagtrabaho na itong mga ito, no? Ganun po katindi yung yung kaganapan sa mga paaralan ngayon sa pampubliko, no? Dahil nga totoo 'yon, nagsara yung mga pampribadong paaralan dahil nga sa pandemya, dahil nga sa losses sila, no? At sinaluyan, no? Sinaluyan ng mga public school, no? Pangalawang sasaluhin namin, ito nga binabanggit ng mga discussions namin sa ibaba, no? yung mga grade 3 namumblema na ngayon. Kasi bago mag-enrollment, may mga pagtataas na assessment dahil hindi sila dumaan ng grade 1 and grade 2, namumblema yung grade 3. Ganun din ang mga grade 7 namin ngayon, namumblema kasi wala silang 5 and 6. Kami rin po sa senior high school namumblema dahil wala silang 9 and 10, hindi naman sila nag-physical learning. So ilan yung mga sasaluhin namin, no? Dagdag pa doon sa sinasabi nga natin, napakarami pong mga mag-aaral ngayon sa PAM.
Teka sir, at tanong ko, did you say you have 60 to 70 students at meron pang 100?
Meron po.
Per classroom?
Yes po.
Sa Metro Manila ba yan?
Buti po, nag-distance learning nga eh.
Metro Manila ba yan or in other
Yes.
So imposibleng mag-full face-to-face, no?
Ano ang pagkakasya?
Kung ganyan karami.
Doon nga raw sa section 3.
Magkakasya tapos
Ano
paano social distancing?
Dagdagan na section 3.
Yan nga po, masakit, ano? Meron sabi nila, transition mula August 22 hanggang October 31. Dapat wala nang magaganap na anumang modula ng pagtuturo after November 2, no? Sabi namin, kung ganun pala, dapat matiyak itong mga paaralan nito. Matiyak, may ginagamit ang mga bata, no? May mga nurse, doktor sa mga paaralan. Kami mga guro, may ginagamit kaming panturo. No, may mga gamitang pangkalinisan, mayroon pong classroom mismo, may mga building. Alam niyo sa amin pag nagsusum sa webinar kami, yan laging klamo. Saan kami magtuturo pagdating ng November 2?
Hindi ko ma-imagine paano nagtuturo online with 70 students or even 100 students.
Hindi naman siguro sabay-sabay yun. Sabay-sabay yun?
Opo.
Wow.
Kina-cluster na lang namin. Kina-cluster na lang namin.
Okay, well, obviously, marami pa po tayong pag-uusapan. Kaya lang, naubusan po tayo ng oras. We'll have to continue this conversation. Obviously, very important topic. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Ketua, Vladimir Ketua ng Alliance of Concerned Teachers.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teacher Vlad.
And in the meantime, we will start up another conversation after a quick break. Please stay right there. The Chiefs will be right back.
Welcome back to the Chiefs on One News. Still no health secretary and businessmen are quite worried. Let's bring in the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry President, George Barcelon. Magandang gabi, sir, and welcome to the Chiefs.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Magandang gabi, sir.
Thank you, sir, for joining us. Of course, the concerns of
Hi,
businessmen...
Robbie. Nice seeing you again.
Thank you, sir. The concerns of businessmen over the apparent failure to appoint a health secretary 2 weeks into the Marcos presidency. Talk to us about these concerns. Where is this coming from?
Well, primarily is I'm taking off from what you were discussing earlier regarding reopening of school. No? We were looking forward to somebody appointed so that one of the primary tasks for the secretary is to work out the proper protocol in the school opening. Kami naman ng private sector, you know how it is, no? In all this time, ang puntos namin is granularity, di ba? Now we work, we deal with within the company, we deal with the local government, and then we take responsibility if we want to open business na yung mga protocol on distancing, on face mask, we try to follow. Sa tingin ko, it helped eh. Alam naman namin na there's no perfect solution na walang infection. Even the risk of opening the school, kasama na yan. We have to normalize yung buhay natin. We did very well in balancing the life and the livelihoods. Okay? Tignan mo naman yung January, itong first quarter, ang GDP, nag-rebound ng 8.3%. Okay? And it's important that the opening of school, of course, will help the economy. But that's not our primary concern. Eh. Ang primary concern namin, yung mga 2 taon na nawala sa mga kabataan natin, it really is a big cost. And then if you go along it further, of course, sobra yung labor force natin, to be honest. No? The industry, absorptive power, can only take in maybe 500,000. Okay? Depending on how this new administration would move forward. Yung bill is one. Diba? We are seeing already the travel and leisure sector, bumabalik na. Okay? People are traveling. No? And then, that's normal naman. But the schooling is also part of the ecosystem. Okay? I would like to really have this school, no, work with consultation. Yung sabi ng yung representative of concerned citizen, no, Alliance of Concerned Citizen, na kulang sa consultation. And I think that's needed. And yun din ang ano namin dati sa business side eh. Kulang ng consultation yung mga lockdown, no? Total eh, masunurin naman kami. When they say lockdown, we follow. But we survive. No? Pero maraming mga MSMEs talagang nahirapan sila. So, talking about the school, I think they should really now, given the time, to do consultation at the local government level. And really, as I was saying earlier, review the subject matter to where we get the most benefit. Halimbawa, cognitive skill, yung mathematics. Okay? Those are important for them to move along when they want to look for a job. Yung sinasabi natin na skills mismatch, no? Actually, there's hardly any matching because you can take your pick. Meron tayong K-12. So I've frequently been asked, how are the K-12 getting jobs? No? Sabi ko, meron naman. People do hire them. But let's say, if you put out a notice na you're looking at job opening, maraming college graduate applying. So between a K-12 and a college graduate, who would you get? Yung college graduate, dumanang 4 years. No matter what, mas maraming natuto niya, di ba? But there's really an imbalance. But having said that, we're also trying to do our role in the technical vocational training. In-encourage namin yung mga members namin when they have job opening, no? Yung within their community, then we have a program on the technical vocational training. Para it will benefit that community. And you know how it is, no? You know, if you're looking for a job, you would prefer to work in a place na medyo malapit sa bahay mo.
Yes,
Because
sir.
otherwise, when you have to deal with this traffic,
Mr. Barcelon, I mean,
Sir,
sorry, I mean, sorry, but I mean, we started off really on this topic, and I think it illustrates really the point and the point of Ed's question. We started off with your concern as well, and the business sector's concern about bakit wala pang health secretary. And your answer itself is illustrative of how, well, tali-tali yan. It really is one of the most dissonant things, no? The president said, we have an economic crisis, and so an economic team is the first thing he puts in place. He says, my food crisis, and therefore, siya mismo ang agriculture secretary. Everybody knows we have a health crisis, and yet, dito tayo sa health crisis, walang leadership. I just want to ask, and if you could put a finer point to that, because when we ask the DOH, officially, DOH officials will say right now, in effect, may holding pattern naman. We have the bureaucracy in place and so on. But as long as you don't have an actual Secretary of Health, what are the policy directions and what are the policy environments that affect everything you talked about? Tourism, transportation, entrepreneurs, businesses starting to open up?
Robbie, my simple approach to this is the local government must take the initiative. And I did mention to Secretary Ben-Hur, sabi ko, you know, you really have to initiate this on the local level side. Same thing when we started reopening the business, no? Kinausap namin yung local chamber, kinausap ng local government on how to safely open up. So at this point in time, I think the local government can take initiative with the public schools, no? Do consultation. Hindi natin maiwasan na walang COVID eh. But what we can do is really to have the testing kits made available at that level. Kung halimbawa may bata o mas yung mga matanda, may simptoma na may lagnat, test them right away. Because we want, I mean, what's important is to be able to arrest yung surges na marami, okay? And we cannot contain it. Earlier, I was sharing that ang original solution tungkol sa COVID is flattening the curve. Ibig sabihin, hindi na overwhelm yung hospital. Yung healthcare service people natin, kaya nila. And I think that is still the same yardstick. But
Yes,
in
sir.
opening up, let's keep a balance, no?
Yes, sir.
Sigurado, along the line, you'll get infected.
So,
No
sir,
doubt about it.
yes, sir. Sir, in real terms, sir, in real terms, from a management point of view, anong epekto ng kawalan ng DOH Secretary hanggang ngayon doon sa ating COVID response? From a management point of view, at least. Kasi, I mean, that's something business is very familiar with.
Well, the DOH, of course, takes care of PhilHealth, no? And this is the what you call the safety net for people who get sick. Na PhilHealth is there, you know, providing that safety net. But alam naman natin, ang laki ng utang ng PhilHealth sa mga hospital. Okay. So that is another thing that I think they have to deal with it. But in the meantime, they have to make sure that the people who get sick and who get treated must be treated. Okay? And for the fact that the opening of school is a priority, I think, in the with the Secretary of Education, VP Sara, and also with President BBM, let's all try to work out something. Walang one size fit all.
Yes. Yes. Sir, may iba lang. Mag-sosona na ang Pangulo. Ano po ba ang mga expectation ninyo sa business community? Do you expect any new pronouncements and any new, any specific policy that the president might articulate in the SONA?
In answer to that, Lucy, no? My reaction to the inaugural speech was uplifting. No? I mean, the president telling us that he trusts, may tiwala sa mga taong bayan, yung pangarap ng taong bayan is also his. No? So those are good. But come SONA, we would like to hear more specific things. Okay?
Like what?
Like job creation. Yung issue na skills training, upskilling, okay? That's important. And the other concern, of course, yung tungkol sa power, now that we have a Secretary of Power, of Polotelia, and the private sector
Energy.
are quite positive about him. Actually, I just met him tonight, no? And we're saying that, yeah, you're an old hand, you've been there, you've done that, but the challenge is now is even more. But we trust his capability, no? The other thing that we have to be cognizant about is how do we attract foreign investment, also encourage local investment. So that's one area that I think should be spelled out, that the ease of doing business, no, would be enhanced. The reduction of bureaucracy and corruption must be one of his anchor. For us to really, I mean, the bottom line is, once the industry gain confidence and really put in money and create jobs, we need that because we need to deal with the high debt that we're facing. Our debt has gone beyond, broke 60% of our GDP. Could be more, considering what's happening now on inflation. So growth is the only way out. And the only way out for growth is the stability and the trust and confidence of both the local business sector and also in attracting foreign investments. So that's what we would like to hear, no, in the SONA for more specific. Normally, we talk about the 100 days. Sabi ko, let's be practical. No, wala na yung 100 days. It's too short for them to do anything or plan anything. But we would like to hear from the different secretaries, ano ba yung roadmap nila? Ano bang deliverables? At saka may timeline. Okay. In many administrations, the plans are very grandiose, no? But the delivery is short in coming. So, yan ang hinihiling namin. Hopefully, in the SONA, we can hear something along that line.
Okay,
Mr.
sir.
Barcelona, banggit niyo yung corruption eh. The business community has lauded the economic team, but along the line of corruption, ano ba yung nakikita niyo na promising signs na pwede nga matugunan yung problemang yan ni President Marcos?
Yung ARTA, the anti-red tape, no, I think should be given more support. Okay? And then, itong ease of doing business, I hope that the various government agencies can review, yung mga how they can simplify to really make business easier, lalo na sa mga MSMEs. The filing of papers, the compliance. After every election, yan ang problema. May bagong na elected, pagpasok nila, isip sila, normally they think they're better than the previous administration. So they come in with new regulation, new compliance. And all of this is burdensome to business. So yan ang hiniling namin. Sabi ko, why don't you review? Kami naman somebody mentioned about right sizing. Okay? So we are, to me, that's right. No? Right sizing, ibig sabihin. You may be able to give better service with less people. We're shifting already to digital. Okay? And I told Mr. Attorney Ivan Wee, sabi ko, you have a big role to play na dapat i-convince mo ng gobyerno how they can simplify, to make it easier for businessmen in the reporting or compliance. So,
okay.
that's all I have here.
Yes, sir. Okay, Mr. George Barcelon, President ng Philippine Chamber of Commerce. Sir, maraming salamat for joining us tonight. At ingat po parate.
Maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Maraming salamat for inviting me. Thank you. Okay.
At this point, we call on our last guest for the evening, former Health Secretary and now Iloilo 1st District Congresswoman Janet Garin. Congresswoman Garin, thank you for joining us and welcome to the Chiefs.
Please allow me to greet Congressman Janet Garin.
Oh,
Congresswoman, long time no see.
Magandang gabi po, Congresswoman. Nakamute pa po yata kayo.
Ma'am, can you hear us?
good evening,
Ayun.
Congresswoman.
Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Good evening.
Evening po. Of course, ma'am, proposals to bring in Dengvaxia, at least in part, to solve the problem of dengue. My question is this, is this really the right time at this point, the right solution to our dengue problem, considering, of course, our experience with this vaccine and the impact it had on vaccine confidence in this country? Is this the best solution that we can have?
Well, the answer to that came 2012 pa po. The World Health Organization has repeatedly told us in 2012 that dengue is of international public health concern because it's rapidly spreading. There is no cure. And for 2 decades that we have been practicing the 4S strategies, it is inadequate. That's why the vaccination program has been incorporated, especially that the Philippines is the exporter of dengue to more than 100 countries. Be that as it may, nakikita na natin ngayon that a vaccine-preventable illness, we could not have seen there's so much deaths and this high mortality and morbidity had it been that the problem was addressed in the proper way. Unfortunately, some politicians were somehow misled by the anti-vaxxers, and there were 2 groups that came in. The anti-vaxxers and a few members of the group who were actually advocating and saying that WHO and epidemiological numbers and multi-pharmaceuticals are in cahoots with each other, which is actually wrong. So, andyan na po yan, nangyari na po yan. Be that as it may, are we not wondering why 23 other countries are continuously using the vaccine? In global health regulation, a single death attributable to a product, even if it is not death yet, but there is a possible link between the medicine or vaccine and that specific death or serious adverse effect, automatic po kaagad yun na hinihinto sa buong mundo. Investigated, and if it is confirmed, the product is totally pulled out. But if it is not confirmed, the product is brought back to the market. So, are we not wondering why in the case of Dengvaxia, there was no movement in the global community, especially among real experts and scientists? It is because they know that this is the work of the anti-vaxxers and a few politicians who actually believed initially what happened. Pero ngayon nga naliwanagan na.
eh,
Pero Congresswoman, ang concern ngayon ay yung timing lang naman kasi mataas nga daw yung vaccine hesitancy, vaccine complacency, mababa daw yung uptake ng mga boosters at naapektuhan daw pati yung ibang vaccination program. Ang sabi nila, pag pinasok daw yung Dengvaxia issue, baka lalong lumala yung problema. Do you think that's a valid observation, that's a valid fear? The one who is saying that is actually an anti-vaxxer. Palagi kasing ganun yun hinahanapan ng rason. Or it's also possible that a person who is claiming that possible scenario was one of those who claimed to be an expert na hindi naman. Kasi what happened to the Dengvaxia situation, ang daming naglabasan, claiming themselves to be experts na hindi naman. Wala po kasing doktor na alam niya yung lahat, dahil bawat isa po sa amin ay may kanya-kanyang kakayahan. Let me put it this way. The dengue vaccine is in the EML. No, hindi naman natin sinasabi na pagka binalik ang kanyang lisensya, ipipilit mo sa tao. It's licensed, it's there. Me as a mother, I would like it for my children or for my family, then I can avail of it. Yung doktor naman, kapag gusto niya para sa kanyang pasyente, pwede niyang ibigay.
Hindi kasi pwedeng totally bawal na, nawalan na ng choice yung iba. Regarding booster vaccination, the low uptake, to my perception, as I have been involved in the vaccination program, is the lack of proper communication and transparency. I've been telling this in Congress last year and even before the Department of Health officials, especially Secretary Duque. Why are we not being transparent that with the Delta surprise, the Omicron variant and sub-Omicron variants, the definition of a fully immunized person against COVID has changed? Akala kasi ng tao na bakunahan ka na 2 beses, primary series, protektado ka na. That was true before. Pero nung nagkaroon ng Delta variant and the Omicron variant and its sub-variants, kinulang ang 2 dose. Kaya kailangan i-reinforce.
Congresswoman.
So if you do not booster dose, the risk of dying or being in the ICU is there.
Congresswoman, ibalik ko lang po doon sa dengue. I mean, it's been quite some time. But maybe just to update us, and also basically a question, is there anything to tie up, is there anything to clean up also with the whole Dengbaksha issue? Because, for example, what did it in and its permits was not just anti-vaxxers to be safe. I mean, to be fair. The reality is there were regulatory questions. Sanofi, after we had given out the vaccines to more than 800,000 children, it was only after that fact that Sanofi said na, ay, dapat pala dun lang sa mga nagka-dengue na. And so there were regulatory questions about there. And then also, the regimen for it is a series of shots. And now I'm wondering, do we even know of those na nabigyan na? Did we even track the 800,000? Where are they now? Where are those children who have it? I'm just giving it a fair shake to your question, what might be the technical reasons to go slow on this? Where are we on those regulatory questions? Even the other countries that have given permits, they were very clear, learning from us. Yeah? But given that, before we jump into and just saying, okay, everybody's doing it, let's do it now, is there anything to clean up from that mess in 2019?
Okay, let me answer your second question first. Where are we now on the 800 children? Just to be clear, the monitoring and the surveillance was stopped by the Department of Health. So that was actually a big problem. Ba't mo hininto yung monitoring and surveillance? Less than half of the 800 children were vaccinated during my time. The rest were vaccinated during Secretary Ubial's time and that of Secretary Duque. Kaya nga, kasabay doon yung monitoring and surveillance, pero nahinto yan. However, in the other countries where the program continued, the results are there. It's all in scientific papers that I can send to your office, and the benefits are clearly outlined there. Second, the issue of Sanofi coming out after the vaccine rollout has commenced. Tama po kayo. Maling-mali ang ginawa ng Sanofi Pasteur at that point. Especially so that they were using medical terminologies that can actually be misconstrued by the general public. What was their announcement as part of compliance? There was a follow-up study on the development of a dengue test kit. That was basically the issue. Because Sanofi Pasteur was working with the University of Pittsburgh because there is no testing kit that is accurate enough to determine a past dengue infection. They came out to announce that the kit that they have developed was used retroactively in the blood samples of the first 43 of the 3,000 remaining blood samples out of the 43,000 subjects of the clinical trial. At ang nakita nga nila, when they announced, they said, protection is very clear for the first 3 years. However, for the seronegative patients, there is a waning immunity after the 3rd year. For the seropositive patients, the result is very good and highly protected. For the seronegative patients, ibig sabihin yung mga hindi pa nagka-dengue, pagkatapos ng 3 taon, bumababa ang bisa ng kanilang bakuna at kung sila ay matamaan ng dengue, 0.0003% of them will have the probability of developing severe dengue in its own definition, which is actually plus 1 day of hospitalization. And that is where the possibility of a booster shot after the testing kit will be used. Unfortunately, hindi na-preempt ng Sanofi Pasteur at bigla silang nag-announce. And the findings which is contained in several documents and the summary, na pinutol-putol at yung nakarating nga lang sa atin is yung statement ng severe dengue. So again, that is where the problem lies. No, and now, if your question is, are there regulatory corrections that needs to be done? The problem there is the communication aspect of Sanofi Pasteur. Kasi dapat, before nila ni-release yung, clarify nila that it was severe dengue defined, old definition of the severe dengue, which actually translates to plus 1 year of hospitalization. And we have to be clear, kasi pag tinitingnan ng mga scientists ang sitwasyon, ang tinitingnan kasi natin doon is the benefits versus the risks. In the Philippines, because this was applicable for countries, they were referring for countries whose seroprevalence is below 70%. Our seroprevalence is actually 87 to 93%. Kaya this does not apply kasi halos karamihan sa atin, especially those who are already going to school, the adults going out to work, have already been infected by dengue at one point in our life, alam man natin o hindi.
Yes,
and that's basically the problem if medical discussions are actually brought outside.
Yes, pero ma'am, isn't that what the regulators are there for? Isn't that why the DOH and our health experts are there for? Kasi you spoke about Sanofi Pasteur misleading the general public, but in the end, that's why we have to rely on the people in charge.
Sorry, I didn't say that they were misleading the general public.
No,
what
Sanofi
I
Pasteur.
mentioned was that the communication of Sanofi Pasteur was inappropriate. Kasi nga, the announcement was for a testing kit that they developed. It was done in France. With internet now, ang dali kasing makuha at madala dito. And then we go back. Naputol Naputol that severe dengue defined was actually additional 1 day of hospitalization for the 0.003% out of the total seronegative patients. Pero sa Pilipinas, dahil halos lahat tayo ay nagka-dengue na, it will not hold water. Similar also with the other countries, wherein the seroprevalence is above 80% and above 70%. Kaya nga nagkaroon ng takot. Kasi ang ginawa nila sa ibang bansa, nagkaroon muna ng pag-uusap-usap, kinausap muna yung mga doktor, then kinausap yung mga departamento, kinausap. It was a step-by-step communication process. Unlike sa Pilipinas, hindi tayo nasabihan, pinick up lang sa internet, biglang may naglabas ng mga doktor at sinabing ipagdasal natin yung mga kabataan, then it became a big problem because we were already catching up. And then there was also the confusion. The confusion because Secretary Ubial was saying, and I mean there were other officials who were saying na hindi inapprove ng FEC. And people were confused. What is FEC? What is FDA? They thought that FEC was the regulatory body. The Formulary Executive Council is that council which is the implementer of the generics law. When we talk about safety and efficacy, it will be the FDA. And unfortunately, nawala na ito sa discussion. And that is why it's very important. There is also full accountability of doctors who will come out and claim to be experts, where in fact they are not.
Ma'am, bago tayo magtapos, maiba lang ako. Ano masasabi nyo sa DOH Secretary question? Meron po ba kayong preference? Or what do you think about the fact na wala pa rin DOH appointment ngayon?
Well, unang-una, kaya naman siguro medyo tumatagal yan kasi tinitingnan naman ng search committee ng EXICOM yung kakayanan ng mga opisyal ng departamento ngayon. And I am definitely sure that maybe in less than 24 hours, we will know the answer to your question.
Uy,
You're
baka
definitely
may
sure,
alam
ha, ma'am?
kayo,
Alam
ma'am.
nyo na yata.
Paki-share.
Moving forward, what is important is for us to allow the Department of Health to have its voice. Kasi ang naging problema sa pandemya, ang daming nagsasalita, ang daming nagsasabing, eksperto siya, eksperto ito. Pero yung mga totoong experts, we are not groomed to be media savvy. Because most of the scientists, their life are in the laboratory. So there's a process by which the DOH should be allowed to speak up. And during the pandemic, medyo mahirap, no? Kasi ang dami nang nagsasalita. That's why it's very good now that there is a concrete direction na mas-simplify yung IATF. So the question is, why is it that we still don't have a Secretary of Health? As we have seen for the past few weeks, the department is functioning well. No? So
Meron ba kayong
let's
recommendation? Ma'am, meron ba kayong rekomendado nyo at gusto nyo sana ma-appoint?
I believe mas maganda po. Well, I'll be honest, I was asked a couple of times about a few people. Pero yung mga, I don't have that power, and I also believe na hindi naman po ako bagay na magrekomenda. The administration has a search committee. They have an EXICOM. They have many people who can actually look into possible candidates. It will be a lot better to get a candidate who did not really apply but is qualified. Kasi minsan, pag marami ang nagtutulak sa isang tao, minsan hindi mo na alam kung marami siyang pagsisilbihan sa panahon na ma-appoint siya. I mean, that is my experience as a former Secretary of Health. Nung umupo ako, ang daming lumalapit, especially on some business transactions, but because I was not indebted to anybody, you can have a free will to implement what is for the Filipino people.
Okay.
So, yan lang po ang masasabi ko.
Ma'am,
And let's just wait for an announcement. It will happen soon. Let's trust our government.
Ma'am, we're practically out of time, but I just want to double-check what you said kasi tinatapos na nila amin yung storya for the front page tomorrow. You said, you're absolutely sure within 24 hours merong appointed Secretary of Health.
Well, partly true and partly not true. I'm just speaking on the fact that alam naman natin na parang kumbaga the President has told us that they will fill up the members of the cabinet, and we're approaching Thursday and Friday, so malamang hindi na papatagalin yan. I think it's best given to those who are actually in the authority to inform us. But what I can say is, whatever is their decision, we in the public health sector will support all the way because we owe it to our people to have a healthy population.
Okay, Congresswoman Janet Garin. Congresswoman Garin is of course also a former Secretary of Health. Ma'am, maraming salamat po.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Salamat, ma'am.
Thank you. Maraming salamat. Stay safe.
And that's all we have for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed here will keep the conversation going. Mask on, wash hands. Stay safe, Philippines. Ako po si Robbie Alampay.
I'm Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
I'm Lucy Cruz Valdez of News 5.
I'm Ed Lingao, and we are One News, all sides, all the time.